What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode. In this episode, I want to talk to you guys about beginner mistakes, because as brand new riders, we're an open canvas and we know nothing, because unfortunately there's way too much information out there and it gets very, very overwhelming. And sometimes as beginner riders, we just want to learn everything, but there has to be a goal in mind, because there's just a lot of information out there and the information is pretty much scattered. So you have to pick and choose what you want to learn based off of what kind of skills you want to acquire. And that being said, I think there are a lot of YouTubers out there these days that provide a lot of great information. However, some of these YouTubers have made a business out of apps as well as courses that they teach, and they make a lot of money off of it. And I think a lot of their viewers are starting to fall into that trap where they feel like they have to learn everything in order to become a great rider. Because in the beginning, when I started learning how to ride a motorcycle, I watched probably a couple of hours worth of material. But then I quickly realized that when I would go riding, I would forget about everything, because riding your motorcycle takes so much effort out of your mind, physically, mentally, emotionally. When you're riding a motorcycle for the first time, there's so much to think about that whatever you watched on YouTube even 10 minutes ago is not something that you're going to be thinking about. And then some of these YouTubers are also teaching parking lot maneuvers and whatnot. And the danger in that is that you can do it on your own, but then you're going to be developing bad habits. And that's because there's no one watching you. What they teach on YouTube versus how it translates to actually on the road when you're doing it are two different things. But as far as parking lot maneuvers, I think some of them are essential, like emergency braking and swerving. I think those are very, very important things to learn. So if you want to do parking lot maneuvers, emergency braking and swerving, I don't think you need someone to show you if you're doing it right or wrong, because if you're swerving and you're missing your target, I think you're doing a good job, especially if you're braking and not hitting a wall. That's a good indication to tell if you're doing something right or wrong. But a lot of the times, parking lot maneuvers requires a trained eye to show you if what you're doing is actually right or wrong. And I think that's where the danger lies, because there's no one with you. As a brand new rider, you're by yourself in a parking lot. You might be scared for the first time to drop your bike, crash it, or whatever. And then you're doing things that are way beyond your skill level. So that's number one. You don't need to be the best rider. You just need to be a safe rider and someone who's proficient enough. And I think the most important things to learn when you're riding a motorcycle for the first time are braking, swerving, as well as shifting properly. If you know how to do these things, I think you're well ahead of the curve. As for all these optional extras that you might see online, like I said, they're optional extras. They're absolutely unnecessary. Alright, so number two, you need to get on a racetrack immediately. Believe me when I tell you this. On your first track day event as a beginner rider, you will learn more skills than riders who've been riding for years. As a beginner rider, the best thing you can do is to get on the track for the first time and do it as soon as you can. I got my license and I did my first track day event, I think 2 or 3 weeks after getting my license. And I think it was the best experience as a brand new rider, because it taught me so many great skills. And not only that, but if you remember in part 1, I mentioned that you need someone with a trained eye to spot what you're doing right and wrong. And the cool thing is that on track day events, there's someone who's actually paid to teach someone like you how to take proper lines, where to brake, where to turn, and 100 other things that comes with riding a motorcycle. I remember my first track day event. We'll never forget it. I went to Auto Club Speedway with my RC390. That long straight, I think I pinned the throttle and I maxed out the RC390, and what a rush it was, man. And then from that point on, I got hooked. And then you know what the residual effect of riding on the track is? It's that you don't necessarily need to ride fast on the street anymore. You become a much better rider. And that's one of the benefits of riding on the track, is that you don't necessarily need to ride crazy on the street anymore. The sad truth is that a lot of the times brand new riders get into a lot of stupid accidents, and they do that because they have this pent up energy that they don't know what to do with, and they got this cool ass motorcycle that they just bought. It's got a whole lot of power and they don't know what to do with it, so they go crazy on the street and then they hurt themselves, and then friends and family discourage them from ever riding again. Meanwhile, there are tracks that you can go to that are relatively cheap. A track day event is going to cost you about $200 to $250 depending on where you live, but you can ride as fast as you want and do it legally and come back home with a whole bunch of skills that would have taken you a year to learn on your own. And that's the benefit. You're getting the experience of a lifetime, and you'll be able to release all this pent-up energy that otherwise would have been used on the street, doing stupid things like canyon runs with a whole bunch of people that you don't know, which we will talk about as well. Speaking of group rides, I think this is a good segue for us to get into group riding, because that's another thing that brand new riders love to do. I totally get it, man. You want to be social, you want to hang out with other like-minded people, but when it comes to group rides with motorcycles, it's really, really dangerous as a beginner rider, because obviously you don't know these people. They don't have your best interests at heart. If something happens to you, they will leave you. No one will give a shit, because if the cops come, they don't want to be caught doing something stupid. Ask me how I know this. When I first learned how to ride a motorcycle, I went on a group ride, and a guy wiped out right in front of me because he took the turn too wide, and he tumbled, and I stopped over to help him out, and I felt pretty bad for the guy. After that day going forward, I didn't do any more group rides because I'd learned that people have different skill levels. The person in front of you may be a brand new rider, or maybe a total squid with no gear on, and they could potentially take you out. Or, on the other hand, you could be the one that's riding really recklessly because you got all this pent-up energy because you don't do track day events. You know, you didn't take my advice and do track day events, right? And so it's really dangerous because not everyone is the same skill level. And on top of that, there's no rules set in place. It's a free-for-all. There's FOMO involved. You want to catch up to the guy in the front, or you want to pass him, and the guy behind you wants to do exactly the same thing. There's a lot of ego involved as well. Everybody wants to be the fast guy. Everybody wants to show off, and you know what? This creates a really, really dangerous atmosphere for a brand new rider with zero experience under his belt. If everyone was on the same team and skill level, meaning everybody knew each other, everybody had some incentive to be careful because they knew one another, they were family, they were friends for a very long time, or they were neighbors who've known each other for years, it would be a different story. But riding with complete strangers as a brand new rider, terrible idea. I would not do it. And so that was number 3. Doing group rides is a terrible idea as a brand new rider. Don't do it. And so now we're at number 4. Number 4 is about not wearing proper gear. As you can see here, I'm wearing proper gear. I have a Dainese jacket with protection on my shoulders, on my back, as well as on my elbows. And then I have these $250 gloves that some might think are overpriced, but you know what? Because everyone that rides a motorcycle will fall at one point or another. And then when you couple that with no gear, that makes it even more dangerous. When you decided to ride a motorcycle, you already knew that this was an inherently dangerous activity, but you did it anyway. But I think riding without gear is being very reckless. Gear is really expensive, guys. I should say really good gear is expensive. A good jacket is going to cost you anywhere between $400 or $500. A pair of good gloves and a good helmet should cost about another $1,000. And then you have boots. The boots I'm wearing, they're from Dainese. In fact, everything I own is from Dainese. There's links to everything that I own in the description below, so I'm not going to name them one by one. Regardless, when you're making the decision to ride a bike, give yourself a good budget that includes proper gear. Proper gear is very, very important because it will save your life in the end. You want your first experience riding a motorcycle to be a positive one, not something that you're going to regret. And now we're going to be talking about number 5. Number 5 has kind of something to do with number 4, because a lot of new riders are interested in the latest and the greatest. And I think that as a new rider, don't buy the latest and the greatest. Get something that you're going to learn on. And if you remember in the beginning of this video, I mentioned something about bad advice. And this is one of them. Your friends are going to tell you, and people on the internet, that you shouldn't be buying this motorcycle because you're going to get bored of it. And by this motorcycle, I mean something like, and I hate to say this word, and it's a starter bike, okay? Because there's no such thing as a starter bike. But anyway, don't listen to people telling you that you're going to be bored of the motorcycle. The reason why they're bored is because they're the typical beginner rider. They get a brand new motorcycle and then they do highway runs and they squid everywhere and they go as fast as they can. Meanwhile, they're not pushing themselves to the limit. What they are doing though is pushing their bikes to the limits, not themselves. They get on the highway and they try to do top speed runs and canyons and stuff like that. Meanwhile, they're making a ton of mistakes, putting themselves and others at risk. I would recommend getting a used motorcycle. There's tons of them on the market right now. My favorite being the RC390. A used model is definitely gonna pay for itself. And the great news is that it already depreciated, so when you're bored of it, quote unquote, you can easily sell that bike and get all your money back. And that's the great thing about buying used, because you can make all your mistakes with it. Definitely put some crash protectors on the bike. If you want to put bars on the bike, you could put bars on the bike as well. Whatever you can, so this way you and the bike could be safe, do it. But definitely buy used, and don't make the mistake of buying brand new as your first motorcycle. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for being a fan, and if you have any comments, leave them below, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Peace.